At 2:47 a.m., the silence of the Arizona desert shattered. A Border Patrol drone detected something impossible, a heat signature moving underground, straight and fast beneath the U.S. Mexico border. Within seconds, ground-penetrating radar confirmed it. A tunnel, nearly 2,900 feet long, buried 50 feet deep, cutting directly into American soil. Inside the Tucson Federal Operations Center, alarms erupted. Agents grabbed tactical gear as red alerts flashed across digital maps. What they saw wasn't just a smuggler's hole. It was a $2 million engineering marvel stretching beneath the desert floor. Reinforced concrete walls, steel beams, LED lighting, even a small rail track for cargo. It wasn't built by amateurs. It was designed by professionals, a hidden highway meant to poison the United States from below. Analysts traced encrypted chatter to one name whispered through cartel networks: El Fantasma, the Ghost, a former mining engineer turned architect of the underworld. Within hours, federal command authorized a full-scale response. FBI, DEA, ICE, and Homeland Security mobilized alongside U.S. military support units. Their mission: locate the tunnel, secure it, and capture whoever built it before it collapsed or detonated. What happened next would become one of the largest underground battles ever fought on U.S. soil. This is the story of Operation Iron Vein, the night America went to war beneath its own ground. By the time dawn began to tint the horizon, the Southern Command Center in Yuma, Arizona, was already alive with movement. Rows of screens flickered with satellite overlays, seismic readouts, and live drone feeds. On one monitor, a narrow red line cut straight across the desert floor, threading from San Luis Rio, Colorado, Mexico, directly into U.S. territory. The measurement stunned even the most seasoned agents: 2,890 feet long, 50 feet deep, perfectly level, perfectly engineered. Someone hadn't just dug through sand. They'd built a structure designed to last. Within hours, the site was locked down. FBI forensics, DEA, chem units, and CBP tactical teams moved in under strict blackout conditions. The Yuma Desert, usually silent, now rumbled with the low hum of armored vehicles and rotor blades slicing through the dawn air. Every second mattered. If this tunnel existed, it could connect to warehouses, stash houses, or even a major cartel transfer hub hiding in plain sight. When the first breach point was uncovered, the agents froze. Beneath the sand was reinforced concrete, not crude bricks or timber, but industrial-grade panels laced with steel rebar, identical to those used in commercial construction. Embedded LED strips still glowed faintly along the walls, powered by copper cabling that stretched deep underground. The space was tall enough for a man to walk upright and wide enough to roll a small vehicle through. One investigator whispered what everyone was thinking: "This isn't smuggling. This is infrastructure." Evidence markers quickly covered the scene: oxygen tanks, Spanish blueprints, and a stack of invoices totaling over $2 million in materials. Nearby, engineers discovered a hidden ventilation shaft lined with polymer tubing, feeding fresh air from the Mexican side. Whoever built this tunnel understood pressure, weight distribution, and airflow. It wasn't some crude burrow. It was a subterranean highway, a masterpiece buried beneath American soil. In the command tent above, thermal imaging revealed something even more alarming. The temperature inside the tunnel remained stable, indicating recent human presence. Footprints in the dust were fresh, cables were still warm. Someone had been there within the last 24 hours. If the builders were cartel, they might still be nearby, waiting, watching. FBI tactical analysts began reconstructing a timeline. The operation had likely begun 8 months earlier, with heavy equipment smuggled into Mexico piece by piece. Each section of the tunnel had been carved using industrial mining drills, supported by steel arches that prevented collapse under the weight of shifting desert rock. Forensics linked fragments of packaging and supply codes to shell companies registered in Sonora and Baja California, both known Sinaloa cartel fronts. It was their signature precision, patience, and power. The logistics alone were staggering. Hundreds of workers, generators, fuel, blueprints, transport trucks, all coordinated without triggering border surveillance. Someone had orchestrated it perfectly. Back in Washington, the discovery sent shockwaves through the Department of Justice. This wasn't just a breach, it was a technological defeat. A structure of that size had evaded ground-penetrating radar, satellite imaging, and seismic sensors for months. How? Analysts reviewing the schematics proposed a chilling explanation. Electromagnetic shielding. Layers of metallic mesh embedded into the concrete may have distorted radar signals, rendering the tunnel nearly invisible. By noon, the desert had turned into a military staging zone. Dozens of black SUVs, mobile command trucks, and surveillance towers surrounded the perimeter. Agents descended into the entrance, wearing respirators and tactical harnesses, stepping into a silent corridor that stretched farther than any of them had imagined. Every foot deeper revealed the same precision wiring, rail tracks, and even security cameras mounted in the corners. The deeper they went, the clearer it became. This was not a tunnel to smuggle drugs. It was a transport artery, a billion-dollar lifeline for the Sinaloa cartel. And now, for the first time, it was in American hands. The question was no longer what the tunnel was, but who had the skill, funding, and authority to create it. And the answer was about to send the entire operation into overdrive. The name appeared for the first time on an encrypted radio intercept, traced from San Luis Rio, Colorado, to a safe house outside Yuma. A single word repeated over and over: Phantasma, the ghost. At first, analysts assumed it was a code name for a mid-level operative, but as fragments of cartel chatter surfaced, the picture grew darker. This ghost wasn't just part of the tunnel operation, he was the mind behind it. A man who turned engineering into infiltration, capable of designing structures that slipped beneath the radar of one of the most technologically advanced nations on Earth. Digging through intercepted communications, DEA analysts pieced together a profile. El Fantasma was a former mining engineer from Hermosillo, Sonora, who once oversaw ventilation systems for legitimate construction projects. Years earlier, he vanished from public records after a failed contract dispute. When he resurfaced, it wasn't in Mexico's corporate registry. It was in the encrypted ledgers of the Sinaloa cartel. His expertise had become a weapon. He'd spent a decade mastering the physics of soil, concrete, and airflow, the very skills that made his tunnels invisible to detection. What ordinary engineers used to build cities, he used to build empires underground. A classified intelligence briefing revealed that El Fantasma had designed at least 3 tunnels across Arizona, New Mexico, and California, all sharing identical specifications: depth, material, and ventilation patterns. The same angular precision, the same electromagnetic interference signatures. Each tunnel cost millions and took months to complete, but once operational, they could move tons of narcotics, cash, or even personnel in a single night. The Sinaloa cartel had effectively created a network of subterranean highways, an invisible web connecting safe houses, border towns, and warehouses disguised as legitimate shipping companies. As investigators dug deeper, the true extent of the operation surfaced. Construction equipment was purchased under the names of front corporations tied to mining contracts in Chihuahua. Financial records showed payments routed through Panama, Dubai, and even Singapore before reappearing in Mexican cryptocurrency exchanges. The logistics were staggering, millions of dollars moving across borders, concealed within fake engineering firms, while the real project took shape beneath the desert. In interviews, cartel defectors described El Fantasma as meticulous, cold, and almost academic. He demanded silence and precision. Any worker who deviated from his instructions was dismissed or disappeared. One defector claimed he treated the tunnels like cathedrals. Every wall, every bolt, every light had to be perfect. To him, failure was not an option, it was blasphemy. When FBI counterintelligence finally located a potential link, it came from an unlikely source: a shipment of industrial-grade ventilation turbines intercepted in Nogales, Arizona. The serial numbers traced back to a European supplier that had previously serviced a mining consortium once managed by Luis Ramon Castillo, El Fantasma's real name. That was the break agents needed. The Joint Operations Command convened a crisis meeting at the Tucson Federal Center. Inside a dimly lit briefing room, maps and 3D renders of the tunnel lined the walls. Analysts compared soil density scans, construction blueprints, and financial trails. Every pattern pointed to the same conclusion: one man was overseeing an entire network of underground structures stretching across multiple states. "He's not a trafficker," one senior agent said. "He's an engineer of infiltration." At the Southern Command Center, analysts pulled satellite archives covering the previous 8 months. Frame by frame, they noticed subtle shifts in terrain around the Yuma industrial zone, faint depressions, almost imperceptible to the naked eye. It was the ghost's work. He had altered the ground itself to hide his activity, spreading displaced sand in geometric patterns to mimic natural wind erosion. It was genius, and it nearly worked. Meanwhile, intelligence intercepts from Mexico's federal police confirmed that El Fantasma had recently traveled to Culiacan, likely to report to senior members of the Sinaloa cartel's logistics wing. The timing matched perfectly with the tunnel's completion. DEA agents realized they were running out of time. If the ghost sensed the operation closing in, he could destroy evidence or detonate the structure entirely. At 0400 hours on June 30, General Marcus D. Holstead, commander of Joint Border Operations, stood before the assembled task force. FBI, HRT, DEA, SRT, ICE, Homeland Security Investigations, and U.S. Army support units. His words cut through the silence. "They've dug beneath our soil. They think they're invisible. Tonight, we prove they're not." The mission that would follow was codenamed Operation Iron Vein, a coordinated strike designed to capture El Fantasma alive and shut down his entire network. Above the glowing maps of Arizona, red indicators marked potential tunnel exits and cartel safe houses. Every signal, every heartbeat of seismic activity was being tracked in real time. As the final orders were transmitted, Black Hawk helicopters lifted off from a nearby airfield, vanishing into the night sky. Convoys rolled through the desert under radio silence. Somewhere beneath their wheels, the ghost waited confident that no one could reach him in his world of concrete and shadows. But this time, America wasn't coming quietly. At 2,200 hours, the desert around Yuma, Arizona glowed with the faint pulse of red and blue lights, flickering across armored convoys lined in perfect formation. Inside the Tucson Federal Operations Center, satellite feeds streamed live thermal images of the target zone. The command channel crackled to life as General Marcus D. Holstead gave the order that would ignite the night. "All units, initiate Operation Iron Vein. Secure both ends before they know we're coming." End quote. Within minutes, 2 Black Hawk helicopters lifted off under blackout conditions, slicing through the desert wind at treetop level. Their cargo bays carried FBI hostage rescue team operators, DEA special response units, and ICE Homeland Security tactical agents. On the ground, a column of map-armored vehicles rolled forward, their engines rumbling low beneath the whir of rotor blades above. The mission was simple on paper, but lethal in practice. Seize the tunnel, neutralize all hostile forces, and capture El Fantasma alive. As the convoy approached the cluster of warehouses that concealed the tunnel's U.S. entrance, the night erupted in a flash of motion. Thermal drones confirmed at least 30 cartel operatives guarding the perimeter, heavily armed, positioned behind vehicles and stacked crates. The command frequency echoed a final warning: breach in 30 seconds. Different 9. At 4:13 a.m., the first team hit. DEA Special Response Unit 7 stormed the warehouse's side entrance, using a hydraulic battering ram to tear through the steel doors. The impact thundered through the desert air. Flashbangs followed concussive light and sound, tearing through the dark. "Federal agents, hands up, don't move." The words barely finished before gunfire ripped back in reply. Tracers streaked through the smoke, striking walls and metal racks as agents dove for cover. From a rooftop 200 yards out, a CBP sniper locked onto a figure firing an AK-47 toward the breach point. One shot. The target dropped. Inside, the agents advanced, sweeping room by room, clearing corners with laser precision. The warehouse interior looked ordinary at first glance: forklifts, shipping pallets, barrels, but under the floor panels lay a hidden world. A hatch disguised beneath sheets of plywood led downward into a spiral staircase of reinforced steel. The tunnel entrance. Above ground, the second Blackhawk descended, its rotors whipping sand into a storm. FBI HRT teams fast roped down, securing the perimeter, while ICE agents intercepted two pickup trucks fleeing toward the highway. A third vehicle attempted to escape across the desert, intercepted mid-route by CBP aerial interdiction, its tires shredded by a burst from a helicopter-mounted M134 minigun. The truck skidded to a halt under blinding floodlights as agents closed in. Meanwhile, deep below the surface, another assault unfolded. From the Mexican side, Homeland Security and Mexican Federal Police advanced through the south entrance, guided by thermal imaging and ground-penetrating radar linked to U.S. satellites. The air inside was heavy with dust and heat. The faint hum of machinery echoed through the walls. LED lights flickered, illuminating drag marks from crates and footprints still wet with sweat and soil. Somewhere ahead, motion sensors picked up activity: 3 hostiles, retreating deeper, carrying large duffel bags. The underground team pursued, weapons raised, flashlights cutting through the haze. Then a deafening blast. A cartel fighter detonated a grenade, collapsing a sidewall and choking the tunnel with dust. The blast wave threw several agents to the ground, but the structure held. Within seconds, they regrouped, pushing forward under suppressive fire. "Contact front! 3 armed!" shouted one operator as the firefight raged in a confined corridor no wider than a hallway. Each gunshot echoed like thunder. Above ground, the main command feed displayed both fronts converging. U.S. units. Hold the north end Mexican units closing from the south. The plan worked. El Fantasma and his guards were trapped between 2 advancing strike teams. At 4:26 a.m., sensors confirmed movement near the tunnel's central power junction. As the agents approached, they found electrical transformers buzzing, crates of narcotics stacked chest-high, and one figure trying to blend among workers. He wore a gray tactical vest, dust-covered, hands raised halfway, as if surrendering. But the face gave him away: El Fantasma himself. The ghost had finally surfaced. DEA agent John Collery, the man who had tracked him for 8 months, stepped forward. "On your knees," he ordered. For a moment, Fantasma hesitated, eyes darting toward a detonator clipped to his belt. Before he could reach it, 2 agents lunged. The detonator hit the ground, clattering harmlessly as they pinned him down. In that instant, the ghost, the man who thought he could bury his empire beneath America, was captured. By 5 a.m., the tunnel was under full federal control. Agents cataloged 8,000 pounds of cocaine, multiple assault rifles, grenade launchers, and over $5 million in cash packed into duffel bags. Outside, the first rays of sunlight cut through the dust, revealing the gaping wound in the desert floor, a steel artery now silenced. Soldiers and agents stood at the tunnel's mouth, exhausted, their uniforms coated in sand. Above them, an American flag snapped in the desert wind. Operation Iron Vein was complete. The ghost was in custody, but as dawn spread over Yuma, everyone in the command center knew this was only the beginning. The war beneath America's soil had just begun. By sunrise, the battlefield had transformed into a federal crime scene. What had begun as an invisible threat beneath the Arizona desert now stood exposed, a labyrinth of concrete, steel, and greed. As DEA evidence teams photographed every inch of the structure, FBI analysts mapped out the network's digital backbone, tracing encrypted blueprints across cartel communication lines. 62 suspects were in custody, 44 on U.S. soil, 18 detained in Mexico, and thousands of pounds of narcotics were stacked like bricks of poison awaiting destruction. The operation was a success by every measure, but what it revealed terrified Washington. By 12:30 p.m., an emergency Department of Justice press briefing was called in Washington, D.C. Rows of journalists filled the room as cameras focused on DEA Administrator Taryn Cole, flanked by senior officials from FBI, ICE, CBP, and Homeland Security. Cole adjusted the microphone, his face grim, voice steady. This was not just law enforcement. This was national defense. What we found beneath Arizona wasn't a smuggling route, it was an invasion corridor, and it proves that America's enemies no longer attack us from above. They're coming from below. The words rippled across news networks. Headlines erupted within minutes. Cartel tunnel sparks national security review. Congress demands underground defense plan. And U.S. launches Operation Subsurface Shield. The Senate Committee on Homeland Security convened that same afternoon. Lawmakers pored over classified photos of the tunnel's interior, the lighting, the ventilation, the reinforced walls, as military analysts confirmed the terrifying truth. The tunnel had been engineered to military standards. Had this structure collapsed under a populated area, warned one Pentagon advisor, we could have lost hundreds of lives. It wasn't just a smuggling route, it was a weapon. The hearing shifted from outrage to urgency. Within 48 hours, a $5 billion emergency defense package was drafted and pushed through Congress. Dubbed Operation Subsurface Shield, it aimed to fortify America's underground frontier. The plan called for the deployment of AI-driven seismic sensors, autonomous subterranean drones, and real-time soil imaging satellites capable of detecting any man-made cavity under the border in seconds. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers would lead construction of a digital wall beneath the wall, a vast defensive web buried under the desert, constantly listening, constantly watching. At the Yuma site, engineers worked around the clock under floodlights, pouring 1,200 tons of industrial concrete into the tunnel. The roar of the pumps filled the night as liquid stone swallowed every chamber, every corridor, every memory of the empire El Fantasma had built. Reporters watched from a safe distance, cameras capturing the haunting image of cement flowing into the earth, burying a multi-million-dollar operation forever. One journalist described it as the day America buried a ghost. Inside the Tucson Command Center, agents replayed satellite footage from the final hours of the raid. Every frame told the same story: precision, coordination, and absolute discipline. What El Fantasma had spent 8 months constructing, the United States dismantled in one night. Yet victory carried an unease no one could ignore. Intelligence briefings warned of other tunnels already under construction, newer, deeper, smarter. Some could already stretch under New Mexico or Texas, equipped with electromagnetic shielding designed to scramble detection systems. The ghost was in custody, but his blueprint was still alive. Back in Washington, Cole addressed this fear directly. We may have closed one tunnel, but this isn't over. They will dig again, and next time, they'll dig smarter. That night, the president signed the subsurface shield funding into law. Within weeks, defense contractors, AI specialists, and geotechnical engineers were enlisted to build what the Pentagon called the ground defense grid, a 1,200-mile network linking every major border state under one seismic monitoring system. U.S. Space Command pledged satellite oversight, while DARPA began testing subterranean drones capable of mapping terrain kilometers below the surface. The war on drugs had evolved. It was no longer a fight against smugglers. It was a race against engineers. At the sealed site near Yuma, the final cement truck pulled away under the setting sun. The entrance was gone, replaced by a smooth slab of gray concrete stamped with federal insignia and guarded by Marines. As dust swirled in the hot wind, one soldier glanced at the horizon and said quietly, "If they dig again, we'll be waiting." For now, the ghost's empire lay entombed 50 feet below the desert he once believed he could control. But deep inside the intelligence networks of the DEA and Homeland Security, analysts were already seeing signs of new construction. The phrase found in encrypted cartel channels was simple, chilling, and familiar. Cava más profundo. Dig deeper. It's a more gotet. The war beneath America wasn't over. It had only shifted from the battlefield to the blueprints, from bullets to algorithms. And the next strike wouldn't come from the skies, but from somewhere far below, where concrete met darkness. In the weeks following Operation Iron Vein, the dust over Yuma settled, but the silence didn't last. Beneath the desert floor, faint tremors began to surface again, small, deliberate vibrations, too regular to be natural. Homeland Security analysts quickly recognized the pattern. The cartels were back at work, digging deeper than ever before. What once seemed like a one-time operation had evolved into something far more dangerous: underground warfare. The Sinaloa cartel and its affiliates had studied America's every move. They knew how detection grids worked, how radar beams refracted through soil, and where seismic sensors went blind. With endless money and manpower, they began recruiting geologists, architects, and structural engineers, paying salaries that rivaled U.S. defense firms. What began as criminal activity was now industrial-level engineering, a war waged by machines and math instead of guns. New intelligence reports describe tunnels with electromagnetic shielding, decoy shafts, and AI-assisted excavation systems that adjusted automatically to avoid sensor hotspots. Some blueprints even showed multi-branch corridors that split into dead ends designed to confuse drones. Each new structure cost millions to construct, but one successful shipment could repay it tenfold. The old model of smuggling was dead. This was precision warfare underground. But America didn't stand still. Under Operation Subsurface Shield, the Pentagon activated its most advanced defensive system since the Cold War: a vast ground defense grid stretching from California to Texas, woven with AI-powered seismic detectors, autonomous drones, and thermal mapping satellites. It could read the faintest shift of Earth, distinguish a drilling machine from an earthquake, even identify human footsteps 50 feet below the surface. What once took days of surveillance now took seconds. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and DARPA began testing autonomous subterranean reconnaissance units, robotic drones capable of navigating soil strata, sending 3D maps back in real time. For the first time in history, America could not only see beneath its borders, but fight there too. The underground had become a front line, invisible, silent, and deadly. Yet, even as technology advanced, the challenge remained endless. For every tunnel destroyed, another began somewhere else. For every design revealed, a smarter one emerged. The cartels had learned that to survive, they must evolve faster than America's machines. And so, both sides dug one to defend, one to invade, locked in a battle of intellect and endurance beneath the same ground they both claimed. The Yuma raid had proven that America could adapt, strike, and endure, but it also exposed a terrifying truth. No matter how advanced the defenses, evil always finds new ground. Somewhere under the desert, a new tunnel might already be taking shape. The war below hadn't ended, it had only gone deeper. Because in this new shadow war, the battlefield isn't the sky or the sea, it's the earth itself. And as long as darkness hides beneath American soil, the United States will keep digging deeper until nothing can hide again. When the last trucks rolled out of Yuma, the desert returned to silence. The tunnel was gone, sealed under 1,200 tons of concrete, its corridors entombed beneath the very soil it once defied. The men who built it were in custody, their empire dismantled piece by piece. But as the dust settled and the flags rose again, everyone who stood there understood the truth: this wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of a new kind of war. For decades, America fought its battles in the open: skies, oceans, and city streets. But now, a different frontier had emerged, one buried beneath its own ground. Operation Iron Vein wasn't just about stopping a tunnel. It was proof that the United States could face an unseen enemy and adapt faster than anyone expected. FBI, DEA, ICE, Homeland Security, and U.S. military units had moved as one, turning the impossible into a victory carved in steel and sand. Across the country, the success in Yuma became a rallying cry. The ground defense grid expanded, satellites orbited lower, and AI began reading the pulse of the Earth itself. What the cartel built in secret, America dismantled in daylight. What they thought was a silent invasion became a symbol of resilience, a reminder that the nation's defenders never sleep. Beneath the celebration, though, a quiet vigilance remained. Somewhere beyond the border, another engineer was already drawing new blueprints, another ghost preparing his descent into the dark. But the next time, America will be ready, because no matter how deep evil hides, the United States will always dig deeper. This was Operation Iron Vein, and the war beneath the desert has only just begun.